All right, strap in, everybody, because today's deep dive is a wild one. You guys sent us this Daily Beast piece. Shazam star Zachary Levi endorses Trump in he calls career suicide. And, well, let's just say the only thing more shocking than this headline is maybe the time Shazam fought a giant talking crocodile. But that's a story for another deep dive.
Indeed. Though I have a feeling today's topic will involve a different kind of beast altogether, the complex intersection of Hollywood, politics, and the ever-unpredictable court of public opinion.
You read my mind. I mean, we're talking about Shazam, the guy who literally transforms from a regular dude into a superhero with the wisdom of Solomon. Not exactly the first person you'd picture diving headfirst into the political arena, let alone endorsing.
Yeah.
Oh, you know.
It's a bold move, to say the least, and it's especially fascinating given the current political landscape. We're talking potential Trump 2.0 here, depending on how the legal chips fall. So for Levi, with his DC superhero platform, to make this endorsement now, it's like throwing a lightning bolt into an already charged atmosphere.
And then calling it career suicide. That's some next-level drama, right?
Yeah.
The article talks about him attending this Team Trump's Reclaim America Tour event, standing alongside Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and former Representative Tulsi Gabbard. But it's that quote, within my industry, this very well could constitute career suicide, that really jumps out. It's like he's leaning into the controversy, almost daring Hollywood to strike him down.
And that's what makes this such a compelling deep dive, because it goes beyond just one actor's political stance. It taps into this underlying tension, the fear many people in Hollywood, especially those with more conservative views, have about speaking out. Is Levi tapping into a silent majority? Or is this a calculated risk to court a different kind of fan base? It's a question worth unpacking.
Absolutely. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's rewind for a sec. The article mentions Levi talking about unity, about Democrats and Republicans both being children of God. On the surface, it seems harmless enough. But knowing the context, was this a genuine attempt to build bridges, or was it a way to soften the blow of his endorsement?
Ugh, the unity angle.
It's a classic tactic in these situations, isn't it? Framing a potentially divisive stance as a call for togetherness. It's clever because it appeals to that universal desire for harmony, for a break from the constant political squabbling. But it also raises the question, is it genuine? Or is it a strategic move to deflect criticism and broaden appeal? It's something we see time and time again, and it often depends on who's already receptive to the message.
You think someone on the fence about Levi, or even Trump, would hear that unity message and be swayed? It's certainly possible. People are drawn to authenticity, to figures who seem willing to break from the mold. And in a world of carefully curated personas, Levi's bluntness, his willingness to risk it all for his beliefs, could be perceived as refreshingly honest. Of course, the opposite is also true. To those who already see Trump and his supporters as fundamentally at odds with their values, Levi's words might ring hollow, even hypocritical.
And that's where this whole career suicide thing gets really interesting, because it's not just about authenticity, is it? It plays into this larger narrative, particularly popular in conservative circles, that Hollywood is this liberal echo chamber where dissenting voices are silenced.
Exactly. By framing his endorsement as a potential career ender, Levi taps into a pre-existing narrative of conservative persecution. It's like he's saying, look at me, I'm risking it all to stand up for what I believe in, even in the face of this overwhelming liberal machine. And that message, that can be incredibly powerful, especially for those who already feel marginalized or unheard.
It's like he's turning potential backlash into a badge of honor. Hollywood might try to cancel me, he seems to be saying, but I'll have the last laugh.
Yeah.
But you mentioned something earlier about a different kind of fan base. You think he's actively trying to attract a more conservative audience?
It's certainly a possibility worth considering. We've seen the strategy play out before, where celebrities leverage controversial stances to tap into underserved markets. Think about the rise of conservative media personalities. They've built entire empires by catering to an audience that feels ignored by mainstream outlets.
So Levi pulls a political 180, knowing it might ruffle some feathers in Hollywood. But maybe those feathers were never really part of the equation. Maybe he's playing a different game altogether, one where alienating a portion of your existing fan base is less important than attracting a new one, potentially a more loyal one.
Precisely. It's about recognizing the shifting sands of influence. In the past, alienating a large chunk of your audience might have been disastrous for a celebrity's career. But today, with the fragmentation of media and the rise of niche communities, it's possible to thrive even while being deeply polarizing.
Especially if you can position yourself as a martyr, a truth teller who's willing to speak out against the so-called liberal elite. It's a compelling narrative, and one that's likely to resonate with a certain segment of the population. But it also raises some important questions about the role of media literacy in all of this. Because if we're not careful, if we don't critically examine the information we're consuming, we risk falling prey to these carefully constructed narratives, whether they're coming from the left or the right.
Absolutely. And this is where Levi's invocation of the poison of media becomes so interesting. He talks about being lied to, about the need to question the narratives we're being fed. Now, on the surface, that might seem like a reasonable statement. After all, critical thinking is crucial in today's information landscape. But it's also a tactic often used to discredit unfavorable sources, to sow distrust in established institutions, and to create an environment where one's own preferred narratives can flourish unchecked.
Like a double-edged sword.
Right.
On the one hand, yes, we should absolutely be questioning the information we're consuming, looking for biases, seeking out diverse perspectives. But on the other hand, this kind of blanket dismissal of the media can be dangerous. It can lead to a rejection of facts, a retreat into echo chambers, and ultimately a further fracturing of our shared reality.
Precisely. And it highlights the challenge we all face in navigating this complex information landscape. It's no longer enough to simply consume information passively. We have to be active participants, critically evaluating sources, considering multiple perspectives, and being willing to challenge our own preconceived notions.
Which, let's be honest, isn't always easy. It takes effort. It takes time. And in a world of instant gratification and information overload, it's tempting to just go with whatever narrative feels most comfortable, most validating. But that's a dangerous path, one that leads to polarization, misinformation, and ultimately a breakdown of meaningful dialogue.
Yeah, it's kind of like we're stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? Like we're told to question everything, but then sometimes that questioning, it just takes us further down these rabbit holes. So how should we be looking at all this information? Especially with something as, I don't know, charged as politics can be.
Well, it's a tough question, but the first step, I think, is recognizing, really owning our own biases. We all have them, They're shaped by how we grew up, our experiences, what we've been exposed to. And those biases, they really color how we see information, even when we're trying to be totally objective, which is harder than it sounds. Right.
Okay, so step one, admit we're not like totally neutral robots.
Yeah.
Makes sense. But what's next? Are we supposed to be like experts in every political theory out there?
Yeah.
Just to tell what's real and what's someone's agenda?
Well, thankfully, no, we don't need PhDs for this. But it does mean we got to be willing to, step outside our comfort zones a bit. Like, think about it. If you're mostly getting your news from places that already agree with you, challenge yourself a little. Check out articles from sources that lean a different way. Listen to a podcast that has a different take. Or watch a documentary that presents the other side.
So you're saying we need to actually go looking for stuff that challenges what we think is true, which honestly can be kind of uncomfortable sometimes. Nobody really likes feeling like their whole worldview is getting shaken up.
That's true. But honestly, that discomfort, that can be where real growth happens, When we come across something that challenges what we believe, it forces us to either really examine why we believe it or to actually consider other points of view. And that process, that willingness to disagree but in a thoughtful way, that's how we have good conversations, even about tough stuff.
So it's not about agreeing all the time. It's about understanding why we might disagree. And hey, maybe even finding some common ground along the way.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe Levi's story, even with all the controversy it stirred up, maybe it can be like a weird starting point for those kinds of conversations. Because whether you agree with his choice or not, it's got people talking about some pretty big things, right? Like freedom of speech, what role celebrities have in politics, how important it is to really understand the media we consume. These are conversations worth having, even if they're tough, even if they make us a little uncomfortable.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, I'm going to leave you all with this thought. Levi, he seemed to totally get that what he was doing could backfire, even calling it, career suicide. So was this all part of some plan? Was he trying to get a different type of fan on his side? Or was it just him taking a stand saying, this is what I believe, even if it costs me? And what does his whole story tell us about fame, influence, and what it really means to speak your truth, even when there might be a price to pitch?
It's a great question, and one I think we'll be wrestling with for a while, that's for sure.
As always, thanks for taking this deep dive with us. The world's a complicated place, and there's always something new to learn. So stay curious, stay engaged, and keep asking those tough questions. We'll see you next time.